Okay, you've got a model, but the hair isn't moving or reacting to gravity. Not a problem. Okay, so you probably have your hair all set up and it has an armature, but that armature is not being respected by the model because VRM doesn't care about regular bones. It wants special bones. When you click on your top model, you can see that anything that's being respected is coded in this sort of yellowy color. Anything else will have nothing. Okay, so first thing we want to do is to select the bones that are misbehaving. We need to add something into each of these. A spring bone joint. Easiest way to do is just put in the search box at the top the word spring. So you click on spring bone joint. You'll know that it's added in the joints into everything that we care about because it'll add these yellow blobs into everything. Go around the model, check that you've got yellow blobs everywhere you're expecting a bone to be. If you find that you are missing some, all you need to do is just click on the missing hair components. So down here, I am missing these three. Do the exact same thing. We're going to need to give them some settings. So by default, they'll have these settings. A lot of these are just totally fine. You don't want to edit these too much to begin with. Main thing in question is going to be gravity power. You want to set this to 0.2. Almost definitely want to set this to 0.2. If you set it any higher, you run the risk of getting the wet hair look. Almost certainly we'll need to fine tune this a little bit. Okay, now that we have our orbs all set up, we need something for them to bang into. So we need to set up some of the actual colliders. Think about anything on the model that could collide with the hair or anything. So in my case, I have lovely short hair. I only need to put colliders in for the head, the neck, and the shoulders. First thing to do is to select the bone for the head on the left. And then we go to add component, spring bone collider. That's going to create a collider on the head. The main thing that we need to increase, especially because radius starts at 0, we need to increase the radius. Very fine tunements for this one. I'm just going to make this 0.01, and that's actually very small. 0.0, 0.1. 0.1 is actually quite close, so I think actually 0.09. 0.09 looks good, but we need to put it in its correct place because at the moment it's running around about my neck, base of the skull kind of territory. We want to then move it up in the y-axis. So 0.02 is not quite enough. 0.06 is close. 0.08 looks like 0.08 is about right. Go around the model and just check to see. And I can see that the size of it isn't quite right. So I'm also going to increase the size to the radius to 0.01. We might get some of the magenta or peeking out beyond the model, and this might be what you need. You will need to play about with the radius sizes for basically every collider and every spring bone joint. So yeah, we then just need to do that for every possible location that could have something that could bang into it. As an example of an area that will need multiple colliders being added into the same bone would be your upper chest, because this is where we're going to store the torso and the left and right shoulder colliders. On the right, we want to then add in the colliders. So same as what we did before. This is going to be the main collider we're going to create. And this is probably going to need to be about 0.1, which is quite a large collider. No, 1.2. You can fine tune this by looking at the model as you're entering the values. I would recommend entering in the values manually rather than trusting the slider. What we need to do next is to move it into a suitable position. So to do that, we would then affect the Y value. Once we've done that, we can then click back on add component and just add in another bone collider. X, Y, Z values and the radius values all dictate where they are and how big they are. We can put as many of these colliders into a bone group that we want. Once we've added in the second one, we just need to then place it where it needs to be. Yeah, once we've got it set up in its correct position, so this one is currently set up on the right shoulder, we can then cheat by clicking on the little three dots, click copy component, then we add in a brand new collider. We can paste as values. Us just putting in a small minus, and then that shows up the two ones on the side here. So just a quick way of like mirroring out where things are. Once we have our colliders in place, what we need to do next is we need to go over to secondary. So with secondary setup, we need to click on add component. We need to now create a Springbone collider group. And then in here, it'll give us an empty list for the colliders, and we just need to add in those colliders. So to do that, we click on the little plus symbol. It'll give us a little bar on here, and we need to then, per area, set up all of our colliders in that area. So if we call this one the chest, we set up 3 colliders in the chest. So we would then need to have 3 colliders set up in here. Then you find the button that has it on there, then you click and drag it into the location of where it is. And you're going to see on here that it says Sphere 1. And that's the name of the collider that is at the location that you've just copied into. When you drag and drop a bone into this menu, it will only add in the collider that's at the very top of the colliders in that bone location. So in this case, it has added in Sphere 1, which is this one because it's right at the top. In order to add in multiple colliders from the same location, you need to grab this and move it to the top. It will then become the new Sphere 1. So if we then go back to secondary, this has been updated to Sphere 2. We then drag and drop the next sphere into the list. The actual order of this doesn't matter. So as long as every collider sphere is in here, then we're good to go. So we essentially need to go backwards and forwards between the place where we have the colliders and move each collider sphere up to the top, and then go back to secondary, and then drag the bone into the box. And then once we've got it all sorted, we will have Sphere 1, 2, 3 all listed here. And that has set up a new collider group. And we essentially need to do that for every location. So just to add in an extra one, add a new collider group. We're going to call this the head. We're going to add in 2, because I can also show how you can add in multiple bones into the same collider group. So we can add in the neck and the head, so dragging and dropping the neck and the head into here, and this creates a collider group of multiple bones but in the same group. We set up spring bones, we set up colliders, and we set up collider groups. You would imagine that is it, that's all we need to set up, but no. We need to add into the VRM instance register. This is where we link all of those 3 components together. And to do that, you need to click on the very top level of your model. And then on the right hand side in the VRM instance panel, it is very likely in the model that you've got that none of these exist at all. We are going to need to add in a brand new one. And that's what we're going to do right now. Okay, so go to the very bottom of where you've got the whole list of colliders, and in this sort of like lighter grey box at the very bottom we have this plus symbol. So I want to click on this plus symbol, and what this gives us is a brand new association between spring bones and colliders. And what we want to add into here is the name of the subgroup of the spring bones and colliders that we're working with. So in here, I'm going to call this hair. The names of these can be non-unique. So you can just keep calling hair for all of the ones that are related to the hair. In the first thing we've got to do is add in the collider groups that we added in. And we want to just click on the plus and click on the plus again. Because we created 2 collider groups, you'll need to add in every single collider group that you think your hair could bounce up against. Okay, future Dio here. I forgot to include one piece of how to do. In order to get the collider groups into the register to begin with, you just need to drag and drop secondary into the collider groups on the right. And it's the same thing we have to do again for this to add these collider groups into the register. It will only want to add whatever is at the very top of the collider groups. So at the moment it has chest, and if we go over to the register, it has added in for us into the collider group here, chest. We want everything that we could interact with, so we have to go back to secondary, move the head collider group to the top, go back to the register, all the way to the bottom. Then we can just drag the secondary into the list, and now we have chest and head. This is why it's super important to name every single one of your collider groups in the secondary bracket. Okay, so last thing we need to do, actually the last thing, is on this new register that we set up, we now need to drag and drop in the bones that we care about. Because we're adding in bones for the hair, that's what we're going to be working with. So on the left, we just need to then drag and drop into the joints section. So this is where it lists out the joints. All of the hair bones that this current subset is going to obey. So all of the joints that then flow into each other, we want those to be accounted for. We know when it's been updated because the orange orbs will be replaced by these wireframe orbs instead. You may have the case where you have fewer bones to add into the register than it gives you by default. By default, whenever you click on the little plus symbol down at the bottom, it just copies what it was last in the register. So if you have, like I have here, one too many elements, we just press the minus to just get rid of the last element on the list. So once you have one of the subsets done, you've got one of the hair strands completed, we would just need to press the plus, and then it creates a brand new one for us. Thankfully, automatically adds in all of the collider groups that we've already set up. You then just need to, on the bottom here, just drag the next sections into it. And then this one only has 2, so we can just click the minus and it gets rid of the last one. And then you just need to go through that every single strand of hair until you've got the completed hair. And once we're all sorted, we will have all of these orbs showing as the wireframes. You would likely have to tweak the joint radiuses and the collider radiuses on each of the points, but that can be done like as you go. So to give like an example of this model that we've been working on right now, let's export it by clicking the VRM and export VRM. Then back in VRM, we can load up the new avatar. And now the bones are being respected. I didn't do a huge amount of fine tuning, so this is not perfect motion, but that goes through essentially all the steps that you need to go through in order to figure out how to add physics back onto things that are just moving badly. I hope this helps.